As regular viewers of this show know, there are a couple things that, well, I just love talking about, and they are ships and politics. Well, our next guest, she knows a lot about both of them. Leslie Katz, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I love to be here.
Yeah. Now, you are now the president of the San Francisco Port Commission.
Yes.
How long now?
Just a couple months. Got on in the end of January as president.
Yeah,
I've been on the commission.
You've been on the commission for a while.
Right, 3 years.
And how does it feel?
I'm enjoying it. It's a lot more work than I'd anticipated. From being a regular commissioner to a president, it's taken up quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who live in the Bay Area and certainly in San Francisco have no idea how vast the holdings are of the San Francisco port and just what is your parameter.
We talk about that all the time, that people really have no understanding about the breadth of experiences people can have when they come down to the waterfront, the kind of operations that we have at the port, from bringing in concrete, aggregate for concrete manufacturing to, Fisherman's Wharf, Pier 39. But we have a working port,
right,
with fishermen coming in with their catch and processing it. And
yeah, a lot of people don't realize that when I have friends come from Virginia or other parts of the country, they're like, where do you get all this fresh fish? I'm like, we have a fishing fleet.
And we actually do fishing.
We actually fish.
And we have one of the few actual fish processing facilities right at the port on the West Coast here.
Now, as a newly sworn-in president of the San Francisco Port Commission, you've also started doing your bit for the LGBT community. I understand there is a new affinity group that you're part of forming.
Yes, it's actually been formed. We have the LGBT Ports Affinity Group. So there's what's called the California Alliance of Port Authorities, CAPA, and they've now recognized us as an official group. We've found at least 3 out LGBT port commissioners. 2 of us are president, one in San Diego, and then friend Michael Colbruno over in Oakland. And
right.
That's how it started. He and I were having lunch one day, and we thought there ought to be a group. So
yeah, I mean, as someone who worked in the industry and went around the world by ship, you don't think of a bunch of port guys getting together and suddenly finding out, wow, one of the largest ports in the country is led by a woman on the commission side, and the executive director is a woman. And then having an LGBT affinity group, it's really quite something.
Yeah, very excited. And a lot of support from the various port directors up and down the state, so it's exciting. But part of what we talked about too is it isn't a traditional industry that one would think you'd have LGBT people in. So we really want to spread the word to our employees and people at all levels in the sort of port world, from people working on the docks all the way, through whatever various activities, to let them know that we are welcoming and we recognize that our diversity only makes us better.
Yeah, as someone who loves history and everything to do with the waterfront, I've often thought that the port was the first place for a lot of people who made San Francisco their home, especially as gay men and gay women after World War II.
Exactly.
The first place they set foot after the Pacific War was a piece of port property here in San Francisco. I've often wondered if there was a way to do a history of just how many people started the gay community, the modern gay community in San Francisco on port property.
That's probably an interesting. You're giving me ideas for our next project.
Yeah. Now, of course, you come to your position with the port from many years in public service, member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. What are some of the other positions you've held here?
I've been on the Democratic County Central Committee for a number of years and served as chair during one term. And then I used to be on the San Francisco Community College Board of Trustees before I got on the Board of Supervisors.
So someone who lives and breathes politics. So I'm going to ask you a question, because I love having you on to talk politics. Sure. It's an election year. We're already, believe it or not, halfway through it. What are the elections going to look like in November, Republicans versus Democrats? And what LGBT issues are going to be up?
Well, on a national level, it's surprisingly tight. We lost the House, and certainly as a Democrat, I'd love to see us win that back. And, I think the strong Democratic seats will certainly stay Democratic, and the strongly Republican seats will hold. But there'll be a few that are up for grabs, and it's going to be an all-out push to try and win the House back for the Democrats, and then also maintain control in the Senate, which is also tight. In terms of big issues for LGBT people, I'm on the board of the Victory Campaign, and we are seeing record numbers of LGBT people running for office at all levels, from local school boards all the way up to, we have a number of congressional candidates. We have several members who are now in Congress. We have one openly lesbian senator, and we certainly look to see how we can add to our ranks. We've got, I think, the 5th largest city, Houston, has an openly lesbian mayor. who's up for re-election, Anise Parker. So there's some exciting races for the LGBT community across the country. And then we've seen the tide turn in terms of support for our community and moving away from same-sex marriage being such a litmus test for conservatives, and many recognizing.
Yeah, does that surprise you that Republican opposition, of course it hasn't disappeared to marriage equality, but that it has been even co-opted by some on the right as an issue?
Well, it's always sort of made sense. If they really were to stick to the principles of allowing people to have the freedom to live their lives as they choose, then it would make sense that they would be supportive. So from a logic consistency standpoint, it didn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, my brother is a founding member of the Tea Party, and I remember when I came out to him, I was like, well, this is going to be difficult. And he was like, no, no, no. He said, I don't care what you do in your bedroom, just don't take away my guns. And I kind of wanted to put that on a sticker. I was like, Tom, yeah, I just never thought of it that way, but from his point of view, it was completely logical. Right. I don't want the government in my gun locker, and I don't want them in my bedroom. So there you go. Now, for those who aren't educated about what the Victory Fund does, what does it do and what is its agenda? So
the Victory Campaign helps to raise funds, work on the campaigns, educate LGBT candidates all across the country. So we have a very large campaign board, and members of the board help find candidates in their communities, support candidates both in their own communities, and in San Francisco we pretty much have everybody coming through here at some point or another asking for help on their campaign.
Right.
And then we have the Victory Fund Institute, or the Victory Institute, which runs just an incredible program to train people considering a run for office to understand really what it takes to have a successful campaign from start to finish, planning ahead. And then we have our annual International Gay and Lesbian Elected Official, or LGBT Elected Official Conference, and it rotates all around the country, but we've had people from India, from Africa, and others attending these conferences, very courageous people coming from their countries.
Now, where is the next flashpoint as far as international gay issues? I mean, so much was made this year about Russia and the law that Putin signed into effect, and just the kind of general fear, I would use that word, in Russia about being gay. I mean, I myself have thought over the years, I would love to visit Russia, but I'm not going to go there as long as Vladimir Putin is in power.
Absolutely. And Uganda is even more frightening. I think one of the bigger issues that's going to impact in a variety of ways will be on same-sex adoptions. And that's already been prohibited, I think, in China and some other countries where many people would adopt their children. And now I think that's an issue that's going to have to be addressed at some point.
How important is the leadership that comes out of San Francisco and organizations like the Victory Campaign to those international issues? I mean, do we as Americans and LGBT people here in Northern California, where we, I think, sometimes live in this wonderful but nonetheless rarefied bubble, impact the rights of our LGBT brothers and sisters around the globe?
I think in a lot of ways we do, partly by being successful. San Francisco has weathered the economic downturn better than so many other cities, and we've certainly not fared poorly because we've had so much LGBT leadership. So I think when others look and they see San Francisco still standing, still strong, and is still strongly supportive of the LGBT community, they can recognize that the sky's not falling and it won't be such a horrible thing. So I think that just that message alone is significant. We've also turned out so much leadership from the community here, from Harvey Milk forward. We had some of the first fights on domestic partnership benefits here in San Francisco and got that through, and then the Equal Benefits Ordinance, to having the marriages in 2004 that really, I think, started the ball rolling for marriage equality and other issues.
Do you think the purple wave of marriage equality cases has peaked, or is it just not going to be picking off state by state by state by state?
I think it's going to be state by state. There's a few others I think that will jump on, and again, some of it's coming from surprising areas. I mean, who would have ever thought Iowa would have been one of the first out to support?
Or my home state, Virginia. Yeah. I mean, that was not done legislatively, but I mean the fact that
right.
Yeah. In our last few moments, any predictions for the election in 2014?
Well, I'll say what I want rather than predictions.
Okay.
I would love to see a Democratic sweep and take back of the House. I think we look to how successful we were when we had Leader Pelosi as the first woman Speaker of the House, and things really were going well. And what was accomplished during that period of time, and I think we should see that back again. In California, I figure all of our constitutional officers will be Democrats, and we've got some phenomenal candidates running. I think the open primary is going to create some interesting battles and allies, exactly.
Well, as my grandmother used to say, from your lips to God's ears, so we'll see. We've been speaking with Leslie Katz, political insider and president of the San Francisco Port Commission. I'm David Perry. Thanks for watching 10%. We'll see you next week.